That's what I want to see in Stage 8 of the prologue. 11 swords. Oh boy. I've made it no secret, at least on my Twitter at ZeroinVN, that I like Fire Emblem quite a bit. While I won't say I've played every game in the series, I have played the original first, and every single one after 5, including Thracia 776. So needless to say, I'm somewhat familiar with it. For my first foray into the franchise, I thought I would tackle one that perhaps not everyone already knows about. With that in mind, I picked Fire Emblem 12, a remake of Fire Emblem 3 that was actually a Japanese exclusive, but did receive a translation patch in 2012 and an updated one in 2017. Fire Emblem 12 New Mystery of the Emblem, Heroes of Light and Shadow, holy this is an incredibly long title, is actually one of my favorite entries in the entire franchise. In my opinion, it is an innovator for the Fire Emblem series. Most people are under the impression that the whole concept of creating your own playable main character in this franchise started with Fire Emblem Awakening, but actually, Mystery of the Emblem is the first one to give it a shot. Not only that, I think this is the one Fire Emblem that finally managed to give what I felt was an incredibly fun challenge for those who were seeking it out. This is the one entry that I felt really revived this franchise that I was honestly starting to get really burned out on. To start off, I'll give a very quick summary of the story. It's been roughly a year since the end of the events in Shadow Dragon, where Marth brings down Medius. During this time frame, Hardin takes over the kingdom of Arcanea, declares himself emperor, and forces Marth to take down a rebellion in Grustian, all the while planning on actually invading Altea himself and taking over the continent. In order to introduce the player character aspect into the series, you play as a new recruit in Marth's army, which eventually leads you into becoming his right-hand man or woman and supporting him in this war against the evil Emperor Hardin. I have a lot I want to compliment about New Mystery of the Emblem, but before I get into that, I want to tackle some of the weaker aspects of the game, mostly to get them out of the way. First of all, I greatly dislike the art style they settled on for this DS remakes. It's hard to describe, it's kind of like a pseudo 3D claymation kind of thing. You can see it for yourself on the screen right now. I think it looks really bad, especially in comparison to some of the beautiful sprite work in the GBA ones, or even the decently detailed models in, say, the GameCube or Wii ones. With that said, I have talked to a friend about it, and he told me he actually digs this art style, so I will say it is subjective, but I really don't like it. My second point might be a little controversial, but I think most people who have played a decent amount of the older Fire Emblem games will agree with me that the story in this franchise has never really been its strongest point. It mostly boils down to a pretty cookie-cutter formula of young lord leads a rebellion against a strong evil empire that seeks to dominate the land, and we end up killing a dragon at the end. While newer games in the franchise, I'd say post Radiant Dawn, have tried to spice up the story beyond this premise, it's by far I think the weakest part of the franchise as a whole. Nearly every story follows this formula, and it is only more recently have they tried anything remotely different from strictly evil empire bad in Three Houses and Fates. As this is a remake of Fire Emblem 3, it is following the formula to a T. That said, it does have a nice setting where it is a direct sequel to Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon, so characters do make a return from the first game, and that sense of continuity is always enjoyable. Although of course that comes with the trappings that the game kind of expects you to have played Shadow Dragon already, otherwise you have even less stakes in the story than you would normally have, but I mean, story was never really the selling point anyways. I think the reason why most people enjoy the Fire Emblem series is because of the strategic gameplay and a large amount of characters you can recruit and train to make your perfect team. So let's get into the good now. The first one I want to tackle is going to be the newly introduced make your own character aspect, which I believe is a natural progression for the series, and I'm surprised they didn't try it earlier. Don't get me wrong, I love Ike, Hector, Lyn, and all the other main characters in the series. However, ever since they introduced support conversations in the game, a big part of the series has definitely been increasing the support ranks of your favorite pairs of characters, watching them interact with each other, and changing their one-paragraph character ending at the credits. Which yeah, if you didn't know, support ranks weren't actually a thing until the GBA Fire Emblems, starting with FE6 The Binding Blade, the Japanese only one with Roy as the main character. So of course, what's better than shipping your favorite couple than just making your own character and getting with your favorite male or female character yourself? While Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem is technically not the first game to allow you to make your own character, As in Fire Emblem 7, you could make a faceless tactician character. It is the first one to allow you to make a playable main character who is actually a part of the story and can have support conversations with the other members of your army. I think the way they decided to include the playable character in the story for future installments is pretty good, where the main story still revolves around the main lord character, with your playable character playing the role of the secondary main character, which you can see in Awakening and Three Houses. They tried to make the story revolve around the playable character Corrin in Fates. Although everyone I talked to told me the story was terrible, personally I thought it was about on par with the rest of the series, although I will say the DLC route was really bad. Even though Fire Emblem 12 is a remake of 3, I feel like they did a pretty good job of incorporating your playable character into the main story of the game, and they get some pretty good moments, especially in chapters that were newly made for this remake. As for the character customization itself, it's alright. It's not the most extensive appearance customization, but you do get to select male or female, which does have an impact on the support conversations, and even some of the in-game conversations during each battle. You're allowed to choose your starting default class, which is quite a welcome touch, as in previous games, characters were usually hard-locked into whatever class they started with. The one part I'm not a fan of the character creation is, they do that thing where instead of just giving you straightforward choices and altering your base stats and growth, they try to be cute and give you choices like, what's your strong point, beauty, kindness, and it really isn't clear how they actually work or what they do. For instance, one of the choices asks what's your strong point. If you say strength, it actually gives you bonus HP stats, which is like, huh? There is a stat that's literally called strength. Why is it giving me HP stats? Overall, I'm happy that the Fire Emblem 12 introduced making your own playable character, and I'm glad that it stayed as one of the main features in this franchise ever since. Now, as to the second and more important reason why I love Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem, is that I felt like it managed to finally bring back a level of challenge back into a series that has long needed it. Which is kind of funny since it was also the first game in the series to introduce casual mode. Permadeath has always been a defining feature of the Fire Emblem series. The idea that if a character died at any point during a level, they will be removed from the roster for the rest of that playthrough. And this is the first game to introduce casual mode where characters don't permanently die. Even though I am someone who enjoys challenges in the games I play, I think adding a casual mode is a fine idea. While I personally would never use it, I think the threat of permadeath forces players to play smarter. If people were hesitant to play the series because of the whole permadeath aspect, then I'm happy that the option is now there for them. Phoenix mode on the other hand I think is a little much, but I'll get to that when we talk about Fates. Now, outside of casual mode, Fire Emblem 12 is also the first game to introduce Lunatic difficulty into the series, a difficulty above hard mode. Even with the permadeath aspect of the series, ever since Fire Emblem made its way onto the GBA with Fire Emblem 6 The Binding Blade, it has been a series where once you get the basics down and you understand the enemy AI, you can pretty much beat any of them on the standard difficulty with incredibly little trouble. Hard mode usually isn't much of a challenge either. You can easily get to a point by like chapter 10 where your characters are already stronger than enemies just from a pure stats perspective, and then you can just steamroll them. It becomes a game of hunting down enemy units for EXP rather than survival. While some of the older Japanese exclusives on the Super Nintendo were tough, the only one that forced me to think through turns post-GBA would have to be Radiant Dawn on hard mode, where the first arc of the game is pretty hard. Now, in Fire Emblem 12 Lunatic mode, the enemies are not just a little stronger than you, they are massively stronger than you. Like as I mentioned in the intro, the enemies are already wielding endgame Levin swords while all you have is iron swords. The enemies are even smarter where they punish players who position badly by always targeting to kill. By having the player be on such a disadvantaged playing field, it actually forces them to really utilize weapon triangles, terrain environments, support bonuses, and every class in the game. You have to think through every turn and not take 80% chances or 10% chances to crit, because the second you position badly, you will instantly get half your team killed. In every Fire Emblem on the standard difficulty, you can choose to field a completely terrible team like 7 sword users, and you would still blaze through every level no problem. On Lunatic mode, if you tried that tactic, you wouldn't even get past the first level. Knights are actually really useful because they are the only class with a high enough defense to not instantly die. Mirrodins are pretty good, not because they're so broken they dodge everything, but because they have a chance to not get double hit by the enemy for once. Archers are absolutely amazing, And Pegasus and Wyvern Riders can't be used willy-nilly, because if they get hit by like a stray arrow, they will instantly die, no questions. You can't just hoard your best weapons for the final battle, because you need those weapons in order to actually get through each individual stage. Having a good level of challenge forces players to actually learn and utilize the mechanics of the game. If I can beat every stage by just running it straight down without really thinking, then why would I bother with pure water or any such nonsense? Before playing this one, Fire Emblem series for me was quickly becoming quite stale in terms of gameplay, where they introduced new features, but I never felt like I really had to care about any of them because the gameplay was easy enough that I could always do what I always did and come out on top. Where stages were just a matter of moving all my units from one side of the battlefield to the other and killing every target along the way. Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem was the first time where I felt like I really had to utilize every aspect in order to come out on top. Where I didn't get to just pick my favorite characters, but had to see which ones were good and which ones I just couldn't use because they were too weak. Even the pre-promoted characters, which you would normally never touch because they just steal EXP away from your better units, is suddenly a godsend who you are thankful for. Now, am I saying that the Lunatic difficulty is completely fair and that it is something everyone should play? No, I think that having a tutorial stage where if you didn't pick the right traits and class during character creation, you already have a 0% chance of winning is pretty crazy. In some places, I think it definitely isn't fair. Same turn reinforcement movement sucks real hard, and to be completely honest, I feel like parts of it are definitely pretty rough this time around, with future installments being a bit more forgiving. With that said, it is because its difficulty is so absolutely punishing that it is so much fun. There are always things you can do to finish each level, it's just up to you to figure out what those things are. If you already feel sufficiently challenged by the hard mode in these games, then yes, go ahead and play on the hard mode. No need to torture yourself needlessly. Like how casual mode was made for people who didn't enjoy the permadeath aspect of Fire Emblem, Lunatic mode is made for people who are veterans of Fire Emblem, already know it inside and out, and really want to push themselves. People who enjoy having to utilize every tactic they can think of to prevail against overwhelming odds. This difficulty really made me enjoy playing Fire Emblem again, and I like having to sit down every turn and really think it through, double checking how every enemy was going to attack, who's within what range, what percentage chance they have to hit, how much damage it was going to do, calculating strength, weapon damage, plus crit chance against my unit's defense and speed. All of that was immensely fun for me, but I already know it's not for everybody. Fire Emblem Awakening is widely considered to be the game that revived the franchise and brought it back into the mainstream, but I actually think Awakening owes a lot of its success to Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem, Heroes of Light and Shadow. Many of the pioneering features in that game, the inclusion of making your own playable main character, Lunatic difficulty, and so on, were all first introduced in this entry in the series. Had Fire Emblem New Mystery of the Emblem not been a remake and had it not been a Japanese exclusive, I think it would have been the Fire Emblem that many would attribute to being one of the greatest. I still think if you are a fan of the series in any way, you should definitely give it a shot. While it is a Japanese exclusive, an English translation patch has been out for many years now, and if you are looking for a challenging Fire Emblem title, or even just a challenging strategy game, look no further. If you want me to take a look at any of the other Fire Emblems, or want to share some of your experiences with this franchise, feel free to tell me about it in the comments section. As always, the like button is down below, subscribe if you want to support me, notification and all buttons are there if you want to stay notified of when my next video comes out, and I have my Twitter at ZeroinVN in case you want to see what I'm up to in between videos. Thanks for sticking around. I don't have anything to say this time around, so yeah, I hope you enjoyed me talking about Fire Emblem, and I'll see you next time.